Most of us know the problems that come along with complaining. When we complain too much, it seems like more bad things happen to us. It affects our mood, people don't want to be around us as much, and we just don't seem to get the things that we want to get as much as we would otherwise. And this is an idea that's in the Bible. It's an idea that you give thanks in all circumstances. One of my favorite stories associated with that is when Paul's in prison, he starts singing hymns and praising God, and he's released from prison as that happens. So there's definitely some truth to this, but I remember the first time that I began to think maybe there's more to this than just that was in reading a book called Good to Great. A man named Jim Stockdale was interviewed. He was a commander in the Navy at the time, and he was captured by Vietnam forces, and he was put in a prisoner of war camp. And so for 7 years, he endures torture, not having enough food, this environment that sucks the hope out of most people. But he made it. 7 years later, he was released and he got out. And he was being interviewed and asked, how did you do it? There were other people who didn't make it. What was the difference? The question that shocked me the most was he was asked, who were the people who were least likely to make it out? And the answer he gave was the optimist. And he said the optimist was a person who kept on thinking that, all right, the next holiday I'm going to be released. So when Easter comes, surely I'll be out by then. Then that came and it didn't happen. Then it was Christmas. Then it was a kid's birthday party. Then it was this or that. And it kept on happening, and their positive visualization kept on not coming true. And he said that they died from a broken heart. And Gabrielle Otienne is a research scientist at NYU, and she's found out that it has some pretty negative effects for us if we're just trying to visualize. So she took students and ran some tests, seeing the ones who visualized better results and those who didn't as a control group. And she took a number of different things: dieting, getting jobs, making a certain amount of money, all these different things. And what she found out was that the people who just visualized something good happening were the ones who got the worst results. They put out fewer resumes, they got a lower salary, they lost less weight, they even came out as being more depressed. And it's shocking that this would happen. Because on the one hand, we know that complaining is bad and it gets negative results. But what we're finding from Jim Stockdale, from Gabrielle Otienne and her research, is that just having optimism, just having a positive view of the way things are going to go is not enough either. But if we look at certain people, we can find that some have found a sweet spot, a mixture of the two, a middle way that has seemed to work. And I believe it was even what Paul was doing. It was what Jesus was doing, of not just positive thinking, but something else was also involved. Michael Phelps is a good example of this. In the 2008 Beijing Olympics, he was set to break world records, and he did, in terms of medals that he was able to win. But on the race that he was best at, the breaststroke, he was racing and he was set to make a record that nobody else would ever break. And while he was in this race, he swims hard, he swims well, he wins the gold medal. But when he comes up, he takes his goggles off, he throws them, and he looks like he's throwing a tantrum. And what we find out later is that he was swimming most of that race with his goggles filled with water, so he couldn't even see. Even though he won the gold medal, he couldn't see during that time. And when an interviewer asked him, what was it like to swim blind? He said, it was exactly as I imagined it. It was exactly as I thought it would be. What Michael Phelps had been doing since he was a young kid was at night, just to get more reps in, he would visualize himself swimming and swimming the perfect race. And he did this over and over again. And we know that that does help with muscle memory. It helps you prepare for those moments. But he said he started getting bored with that. And so what he would do was he would imagine different things going wrong. And one of those things was, what would happen if my goggles filled up? And so when he reached that moment and his goggles did fill up, he didn't have despair. Instead, he knew exactly what to expect. And this has happened in other cases too. In the civil rights movement, specifically in the 1964 campaign for voting, the people who were going as activists, before they went, they practiced being cussed at. They practiced having food poured on them. They practiced taking blows and saying, all right, these things are likely to happen to achieve the goals that we want, and so we need to be prepared for it. So they were. They practiced having bad things happen to reach their goals, and because they were able to accomplish the things that they wanted. And when you look closely at the Bible, you find that many of these things that we take as just be positive, just be thankful, just look on the bright side, that's not the full story. They were able to be thankful, they were able to praise God in all kinds of situations, but this came from a knowledge of knowing that they would be persecuted. Jesus was very upfront with people about the price that they would have to pay when they'd follow him. One of the examples was, he said, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. In other words, if you want to follow me, you're going to be like me, and you're going to be homeless for a while. And so for us, I'm not saying we need to start complaining, because complaining has some horrible results. But what we do need to do, if we spend time visualizing the good things happening in our lives, we need to also recognize that every good thing that we go after is going to have a price. And there are going to be hard things that come up, and we're going to have to do things that we don't want to do. And if we are prepared for that internally before we have to face those things externally, then we're going to be much more likely to follow through, knowing that there was going to be a price that we had to pay. And everything that we want that is worthwhile has a price. For me, whether it's being a good dad, being a good husband, being a good friend, being a good coworker, being a good boss, whatever these things that I've had to experience in my past, everything that I've had to do well required that there be some sort of price and that I would have to pay it. And I know that the times that I have stepped up the most have been the times that I've been realistic about the price that was going to have to be paid. And so what I'd ask you to do is not to start complaining, but start recognizing that if you have things that you want, that they aren't going to come easy, that you will have to work, that you will have to suffer. But if the goal is worth it, then that's okay.